Morning, Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, yes, we are coming to you live from the Assembly Legislature building, where we've been here all week in observance of the passing of our first Chief Secretary, Mr. Hochoy Charles. And of course, he passed away on December 31st. Definitely leaving his mark on Tobago. And as we continue to acknowledge his contributions, and his contributions are so much, we spend days upon days speaking about it. Attempt a little bit about it. First of all, I am being joined this morning by Ms. Pamela Nicolson, who was a former member of Parliament under the NAR. As we remember, Mr. Hochoy Charles. So a special good morning and welcome to you, Ms. Pamela Nicolson. How are you this morning?
Yeah, well, good morning, Ms. Jackson. Pretty fair. Right? This is a senior citizen, so, we always are fair.
Well, certainly my pleasure to have you here with me this morning. But, as we get into the conversation, and we look back at Mr. Hochoy Charles, what stood out to you the most about the man?
Well, the first thing that I would like to talk about Mr. Hochoy Charles is that a group of us belonged to a team in a club called Over.
That's fine.
Yeah, I really grieved when I learned of the passing of the first Chief Secretary for Church, because we played a significant role in an organization called the Democratic Action Congress under the purview of Mr. A.N.R. Robinson. Charles emerged as a heavy roller from that institution, and we functioned voluntarily from that institution. And after we had the first county council election, he won his seat and he became a county councillor. But Charles emerged as a Tobagonian, someone who served the people. After he functioned as a councillor, he went to Trinidad as a senator.
Yes, he did.
And he was a junior to the National Security Minister at the time, which was Joseph Tony. Then he returned to Tobago and functioned as a secretary in Tobago. His role was a secretary in works and infrastructure. And he did some good work in that area. One of the things that I could always remember is the road that he developed in that Belmont area from Hope into Mason Hall. That road was developed by Hochoy Charles. He also did some work in the Golden Lane area, from the one-lane scenario to more than one lane. And he really structured there. After that, when you had the elections in 1996, he became the first Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. And he was very strong, and he served the people in a very meaningful way. He had set up a number of institutions at the time. One of the things that you can remember is the PRDI.
Yes.
The PRDI was designed by Mr. James, Dr. James. It shouldn't be Mr. James, it's Dr. James. And what was the PRDI? The PRDI was really meant Policy Research and Development Institute Information. This was a structure of Chief Secretary for the Tobago House of Assembly, but it was designed by Dr. James. And you had you had some economists, you had some agricultural people working there. I don't know if you need names, right? Because you had Mr. Rennie Dumas, you had Dr. Colin MacDonald, you had Miss Pearl Titus. She came from Trinidad to function in Tobago, and she was agriculture. Mr. William Benjamin, he was agriculture. You had Mr. Anselm Richards, you had Dr. Hazel, functioning in that institution. And the institution was to structure the Tobago House of Assembly to make it an institution that Tobago will always remember. And that came from
Mr. Charles.
Chief Secretary Charles.
Yes. What was he like in the early days? Did you work along with him as a county councillor in Tobago?
No, I didn't work with him as a county councillor. I functioned with him in the Democratic Action Congress. And we functioned voluntarily under the purview of Mr. Robinson.
And what was he like during those times?
Well, I enjoyed it. Mr. Robinson had come back from Trinidad to Tobago, and then from that institution, remember, you had an election in 1978, and there emerged Mr. A.N.R. Robinson and Dr. Winston Murray.
But Mr. Hochoy Charles, during those times, what was he like?
That is how he emerged as the heavy roller, because he was there at all the meetings and so on, talking for the people of Tobago.
So, I mean, you know, when you look back at some of the work that you did with him, whether it's in Parliament and so on, working under the NAR government, under Mr. Robinson, you know, what stood out for you during that time?
Well, Senator Charles functioned more from an advisory perspective. I would say that. And then he came back to Tobago because the Tobago House of Assembly was in need at the time. And Charles really wanted to do work for Tobago. He was always a part of Tobago.
And what can you tell me also about his passion? Because what we've known and what we've seen about him is that passion for Tobago.
Well, he cared for Tobago because any group that was functioning and he was not there, he will go and join to guide the group. Because you remember the last one that you had under Mr. London. That group was to continue to deal with the autonomy for Tobago. Charles did not belong to the party, but he went and he joined the group. And he functioned with the group. And that document is still in the National Parliament. To date, we have not gotten our autonomy. And Charles will cry in his grave.
Did you have any interactions with him in recent times before he passed?
No, I wouldn't say that. Because I didn't even know that he was ill. I was at home because I am down too. And it was at home that I heard that he had passed on.
But
he served Tobago to the extreme, I would say. And his business was for Tobago, Tobago's development, Tobago's democracy, Tobago's autonomy. That was Charles right down until he died.
And then what was the working relationship with him like during your time in governance?
Well, during my time in government, I could remember when, under the Pandey government, when we sent our funds to Tobago, Charles refused to accept. He said all Tobago's money must come to Tobago. And that is how they moved, remember, the Dispute Resolution Commission. And when they went to the Dispute Resolution Commission, they won the case. Minority result, something like 4.3%, and majority, 6.9%. And to date, ma'am, we have not received our 6.9%. A disgraceful situation as far as the parliament is concerned. Tobago should have gotten its determined result. And Charles, very, very important in that scenario. He was the man who took the issue, also guided by Dr. Vanus James, to the Dispute Resolution Commission. And the Dispute Resolution Commission gave those results. And even the minority results, it's unbecoming of the Minister of Finance as far as I'm concerned.
During that time, though, when Mr. Charles was fighting and advocating for a greater portion, or for what Tobago deserved, what was the reactions to him, and how did he handle the opposition or the opposing voices that were not necessarily in agreement?
As far as the opposition is concerned, I don't think that they had a problem, Because the opposition, remember, under the present leader. In 2013, they went to the House for internal self-government. It is the PNM that opposed. I could remember when they took their document to Parliament, the present Prime Minister, Hochoy Charles, not Hochoy Charles,
Dr. Keith Rowley.
Keith Rowley, he made his statement and walked out of the House. Disgraceful. And then when after with the work that was done with under Mr. London, remember you went to the different villages to hear the views of the people and so on. And the final document that was taken, that was sent to the Parliament is still there.
So when you...
And Charles was an integral part of that.
So when you look back at the life of Mr. Charles, you know, what would you say is the biggest thing that represents who he is or who he was as a man?
As far as I'm concerned, his business was extreme as far as Tobago was concerned. His life was for Tobago. And he functioned for Tobago all his life. And the Tobagonians, I think, are very grieved, very saddened that we have lost Chief Secretary Charles.
Do you think that Tobagonians also understood what he was trying to do during those times of active politics?
Yes, he did. Remember, another area that Chief Secretary Charles did was when he implemented the scholarship program. The scholarship program where young Tobagonians were sent to St. George's University in Grenada. And we have a number of doctors and health people. We also have economists. The Secretary for Finance under Mr. London, Mr. Jack, he came from that. You had Dr. Duke, who is at Roxborough. You have Dr. Baker. You have many, many Tobagonians that benefited from what Mr. Charles did.
And, you know, how did...
And Trinidad was very unhappy that he implemented that program.
And so tell me about, you know, just him dealing with that, him dealing with people in Trinidad not so happy about him going ahead with making sure Tobagonians had that opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise had.
Well, I don't know how to answer that one because I told you about the PRDI, which is that was the structure to be the Tobago House of Assembly. You also had Mr. Alan Richards was the chief administrator. That too was to strengthen the Tobago House of Assembly. And as far as I'm concerned, Chief Secretary Charles' business was Tobago, Tobago's development, Tobago from a democratic perspective, Tobago from a structural perspective. And many people were very happy with the work that he did. Because as I told you, you had the PRDI, which was to structure the Tobago House of Assembly, and I explained that
Yes,
to you.
did.
Then you have the scholarship system that he implemented. Then you have infrastructural development, roads and that kind of thing that were just one lane. He developed them. So Tobago was very happy with the way in which he functioned.
What can you tell me about him being able to manage the Tobago House of Assembly at a time when we did not get the same amount of money that we're getting now, at a time when resources were tough, and it was not, things were not quite as easy as it is right now. Tell me about him being able to manage and accomplish a lot with little.
Well, he accomplished those things that I just spoke to you about, but as far as I'm concerned, the parliamentary system in Trinidad, they are very wicked. Their purpose was not to give Tobago their money, but they will use it. They'll use it to build the airport. They'll use it for public utilities. They'll use it for transport, roads, and so on. So they now will be using the funds in Trinidad when the funds really should be coming to Tobago, to the Tobago House of Assembly. And that was the battle that Secretary Charles was fighting for. And that is the importance of the Dispute Resolution Commission. And it is very sad that the Minister of Finance to this date have not given us our money. And Charles must have grieved right down to the finish because of that. And we will continue the fight. We have to continue the fight.
So how do you think we should remember Mr. Charles? What do you think is the best way to honor him?
Just as how you honored, you have to honor him just like how you did Robinson at Bacalet and so on. You can do something up at Golden Lane. As a matter of fact, a number of them should be honored. You have Bigot, you have, look at APT James. One is not happy to see how his thing is kept. And then you have now Mr. Hochoy Charles. So you should have a system where all those gentlemen should be honored. And Charles should be one. For the great work that he did for Tobago.
Right. And you know, when you look back on just even your personal relationships, or personal interactions, I should say, with him.
Well, my personal action, the Democratic Action Congress, we really worked there. You know, we worked throughout Tobago as an executive, a voluntary executive, a team of us. Charles was there and a number of other people, and we functioned. And that is why we had the development coming out of it for the election when we won that election with Robinson and Murray. And remember, it is Robinson who moves the motion in the House for internal self-government. PNM couldn't, Williams did not answer. And they tell us after we won the election in Tobago, if we want it, we take it. And whoever was the Minister for Tobago Affairs, he removed that person. So we struggled, we carried on the battle. We carried on the battle, then remember we came together with Panday and his team, Carl Hotzer Phillips and his team, and we formed the NAR. And it was 1968. We won that election, and Robinson became the Prime Minister. And it is out of that purview that Charles functioned as senator, the junior senator in Trinidad, and then he came back to Tobago. And remember, when Mr. Robinson went to Trinidad to become the Prime Minister, when he asked who you want to be your leader, everybody in the park shout out, heavy roller. Charles was the heavy roller, and he was the heavy roller right through.
And, you know, and I mean, we've been spending quite a lot of time talking about Mr. Charles, but we just got about a minute or two left. And I mean, you also worked with Mr. Panday, and we did lose him a couple of days ago as well. What can you tell me about your memories about Mr. Panday and working along with him in the NAR?
I think Mr. Panday was, you mean in the NAR?
Or in general?
Oh, because in the NAR, you had a problem, and,
Yes.
and because of that problem, they pulled away with their team and went down, and then you remember they formed the ULF, right? And it is out of that they came and they won the election. They didn't win the election. The election was even with the PNM. And then they communicated with Mr. A.N.R. Robinson, and the other person was Pamela Nicolson.
Yes.
And the two of us linked with Panday, and they became the government at the time. But Panday as a Prime Minister was very calm, I think. I think he was very calm, and when we sent off the fundings that were under the different ministries and so on, and Charles said, I don't want that. I want all our money to come to Tobago. Panday responded, well, then is when the Dispute Resolution Commission was formed. And Panday was very calm at the time, as far as I could remember. Because it was after that then you had the present lady. She formed she won the government, or I think the PNM had an early election, and
yes. All right.
I can't remember everything about that.
And that's no problem, but it was certainly a pleasure.
Kamla Prasad Bisesa won that election. Remember that election in 2010? Was 2010 to 2015, right? And that is what I was telling you about, that they carried a document to Parliament for internal self-government. And the PNM, Dr. Rowley, he spoke in the House and they walked out. The PNM did not, so when the PNM makes statements that UNC would not support the PNM for autonomy, I disagree.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Ms. Pamela Nicolson. It was certainly a pleasure getting to speak with you this morning as we reflect on the life of Mr. Hochoy Charles. And of course, we had to touch on Mr. Basdeo Panday as well.
Yes.
Because of the time that we're in. Right? So, well, viewers, we're not done yet with our conversations this morning. So we just had Ms. Pamela Nicolson, and up next we have Mr. Ashwood Jack as we dive more into the life and the contribution of Mr. Hochoy Charles, our first Chief Secretary.